In 1967, Michael Snow released an obscure and experimental short film called Wavelength. The premise of this piece is incredibly simple. Mount a camera in an elevated position, film a room overlooking a busy city street, and use the camera's lens to slowly zoom in for the entire 45-minute runtime of the movie until only a picture mounted on the other side of the room remains on screen. Having nothing better to do in my free time, I decided to watch the movie, only to find out that the reality of it is actually a bit more complicated than what I was led to believe. Granted, I didn't really enjoy my time with it, but I do have to be honest and say that there is more to it than the 45-minute long zoom that the movie is widely known for. There are scenes involving characters either moving a bookcase, listening to the Beatles, randomly dying on the floor, and even a character stumbling on their body. There are prolonged and potentially epilepsy-inducing scenes where the director was fucking with the lens, filters, or film stock, I'm not exactly sure which, to completely change the gradient and vibe of the scene. Many times these changes in color are used to hide cuts and give the illusion of a single prolonged zoom, yet other times they feel mostly random in nature. There are even scenes from both the past and future being superimposed on top of the current shot, all the while a haunting soundtrack which can best be described as an ear-piercing screech that sounds like a perpetually rising siren is used to constantly unnerve the viewer. Yet despite all of these additions that make up the entire experience, I would say that the bulk of what the movie revolves around is this one long zoom. Without going deep into experimental avant-garde film discussion, you may never understand what a good chunk of people see in it. Apart from the fact that movies were the only art form at the time where an artistic statement like this was feasibly possible, yet despite the lack of a coherent story, despite the lack of any real acting or characters or CGI or varied locations, or basically anything that would in the eyes of a general movie-watching audience constitute a movie, there are actually quite a few critic reviews calling it a masterpiece, and I can't for the life of me find any discussions over whether or not this is or isn't a movie. Everyone just kind of accepts that it is a movie, even if an experimental one at that, and moves on with their life no matter if they love it, hate it, or fall somewhere in between. If this shot wasn't filmed but was instead photographed with a camera, it would have been a photograph, just how a photograph of nothing but a white speck floating in darkness is considered a photograph. Hell, you could even make the shot into an album cover and make it into an entirely new art form. And despite the soundtrack being mostly composed of an ear-piercing screech, that is still music. Just how droning, glitch, wonky, noise, or ambience are considered music genres. Genres that are constantly being rated highly by both critics and audiences alike. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because a game called Mixtape released recently, and having not experienced it for myself, every single comment I can find about it made me believe that it is a Wavelength-like experience. Just a slow, torturous movie that shouldn't even be considered a video game with nothing of note going on. You only press a single button every now and then, and naturally, it's woke.
Turn the friggin' frogs gay!
So I sat there and went, well, I have an Xbox Game Pass subscription, might as well see what the fuss is about. Worst comes to worst, I'll pointlessly spend 3 hours of my life playing a game so unfathomably bad that every reviewer on planet Earth who gave it higher than a 5 out of 10 should feel ashamed and sink into the ground. And now I've beaten it. I've played through it twice actually, and I have to say that I do not understand the outrage. What the fuck are you people smoking? Let me make this abundantly clear, I have no problem with people liking or disliking this game, or any other game for that matter. Healthy conversations between people who disagree are a good thing, especially if both parties are willing to listen and treat each other with respect. If you are willing to sift through the hundreds upon hundreds of comments of sheer reactionary stupidity, all the while looking past the videos that just frame every design choice done in this game as a play from the woke mob to force their LGBTQI+ views on them, you will find thoughtful reviews from people that both loved and hated this experience. This, however, is neither healthy nor constructive. This is a tsunami of angry, idiotic, and bullshit propaganda aimed directly at game reviewers and developers, actively telling them to stop making art. And I'd go as far as to say that a vast majority of these comments hold no merit to anyone that is willing to do even a couple of minutes of research. Despite what the internet is making you believe, Mixtape is a game. It just is. I am using an input device which is plugged into the USB port of my PC to take control of a character and make things happen on screen. Hence, it is a video game. Sorry to all the people who clicked on the video expecting a big, epic breakdown of what makes a video game. You'll find that many things in life just don't have a grand and epic arc to them. Sometimes a conclusion just occurs out of 3 seconds of research. And the conclusion is that Mixtape is in fact a video game, even if one of the least interactive ones in recent memory. I don't even want to make any quality statements here. I think that this game is alright at best. I found a lot of the sequences to be pretty bland and uninspired. The game works best in its quiet moments where you're just chatting with your friends or pondering over the good old days, yet those scenes are too few and far between for me. The soundtrack does a lot of the heavy lifting, yet it's not one that would give me any strong feelings of nostalgia, and while most of the voice acting is fine, some of the material really isn't all that great. Granted, I'm not really the target audience, so at best this game could have filled me with a sense of anemoia, which it unfortunately didn't, but even if you want to sit there and tell me that every definition of video game is somehow false, or that Mixtape doesn't count as a video game, I don't understand how Mixtape is any less interactive than games such as Limbo, Gone Home, Edith Finch, The Walking Dead, Journey, Flowers, Sword of the Sea, Inside, Pong, Getting Over It, Dear Esther, and naturally the GOAT, Bush Shootout.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Now watch this drive.
In the first 30 seconds of the game, you can literally speed up, slow down, go left, go right, do different tricks on a skateboard, all the while you're dodging incoming traffic, yet the online discourse surrounding this game will have you believe that it's a quote-unquote one-button game that finishes itself with no player input. For transparency's sake, I would like to make it abundantly clear that there are indeed a few parts of this game that require zero input from the player in order to succeed, but to equate that to the entire experience is dishonest at best. These same people who are spreading lies that are fueled by nothing but irrational hatred towards something they haven't even experienced for themselves are taking cheap potshots at game journalists when these same journalists also give out 9s and 10s to games with deeply interwoven and complex systems. At no point in time do these people seem to understand that games can exist on a scale from least to most interactive, from incredibly easy to very difficult, with this scale not being an indictment on the overall quality of the art they're experiencing. These scores are just opinions and not some objective rating. Even the less than glowing reviews of this game are being bombarded from all sides with hateful comments telling the reviewer how wrong they are for finding Mixtape to be a good experience. It is absurd. The loud internet mob that has infested every conversation about this game would have you believe that the only reason this game even exists is due to the fact that the founder of Annapurna Interactive is a rich bitch who paid for all of the licensed music in this game. Now I'm noticing a trend where a good portion of these people don't understand that she is the founder of the company that published the game, not developed it. But even if that weren't the case, I have no idea why this is perceived as a negative towards the game's quality as a whole. At best, you can make the argument that such a financial injection should discount it from being an indie game, which is a fair statement to make. But even if this rumor is true, I don't understand why this is seen as a bad thing in general. Instead of buying herself a third private jet, getting a nefarious private island, or building a data center that is going to slowly destroy an already dying planet, her money went towards funding a new game that most people who actually bought and played it seem to have enjoyed. This same company is responsible for the publishing of literally dozens of games, many of which are absolute gems at worst and literally some of the greatest experiences a human body can play through at best. One of the games even has voice acting done by James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Goddamn Dafoe, yet only now with the release of Mixtape has the funding gone too far. Somehow. In the past couple of years or so, thoughtful discussion over art has all but gone down the shitter. While I don't believe that people are getting dumber or that art discussion was once better, the fact that anyone with a stable internet connection can just rage bait and throw their uninformed opinions into the void that is the internet, manipulating the masses, spreading false propaganda, and then spam said propaganda on every possible video and platform is a joke. Meanwhile, the people that actually care about the art form in question have to spend hours to play through the game, come up with their own thoughts, factor in all of their experience when reviewing something, sometimes even replay a game multiple times to really form their own opinions, or return to the game on a different day if they're feeling off that particular day. The work required to form your own opinions is so much more taxing and time-consuming in comparison to most ill-informed slop, that it is impossible for these people to make their opinions known fast enough to compete with the hurricane of reactionary views. Only the loudest, most reactionary, and heavily opinionated sides get their say in, all the while people who form their own opinions sit in the background and watch their thoughtful opinions get swept away in a sea of bullshit from both sides of the extremist divide. I understand that human beings were never good at thinking critically about their surroundings. Our brains and bodies evolved with one goal in mind: survival. Our perception of the world molded in a way to achieve that in the simplest and most effective way possible, no matter if our initial assessment turns out to be right or wrong. Yet with the internet at our disposal, you'd think that the average person would actually seek out the truth about the world, its inhabitants, its scientific breakthroughs, how we've progressed as a society, and naturally where we are lagging behind. Yet it feels like we are more than ever before predisposed to marketing, reactions, and giant echo chambers that agree with our already preconceived notions and ideas. Skynet 1, the thoughts in our brains are now algorithmically generated, and I see this in so many discussions, whether gaming related or not. The problem with Avowed isn't that water doesn't react when you shoot an arrow into it, or that an arrow shot in the air doesn't fall back down, or that NPCs don't react to you. By the way, the developers fixed some of these quote-unquote issues, so anyone that actively participated in such banal rhetoric made the developers at Obsidian spend time and resources on fixing these things, and I wonder if any of the people that actually believed their talking points went and played the game after all of these changes. I wonder if they went into the game, shot an arrow into the sky, see it fall down and make a splash in a river, and thought to themselves, "Man, I really am fixing gaming." Speculation alert, speculation alert. My guess is that they didn't, because these people don't care about Avowed, they don't care about it being the best possible game it can be, they just care about muddying the conversation with a deluge of bullshit that serves to make their side look better. And guess what? They won! Obsidian actually spent time and resources fixing something that bothered a loud and obnoxious subset of people who probably never even tried their game, instead of them using said resources to more effectively fix the absolutely fucked progression in that game, the stuttering that happens on many PCs, or any other more pressing issues. The biggest problem with Horizon Hunters Gathering is, well, we don't know what it is. The game hasn't even released yet. To me, it just looks like a fun co-op game with Night Rain-like elements that I'll pick up and try with my friends once it goes on a deep sale. But the sheer amount of people telling you exactly what's wrong with the game, despite them only seeing a trailer or two, is just staggering. They just spew banal platitudes cosplaying as deep wisdom, and seemingly hundreds, if not thousands of people agree with them. A game for everyone is a game for no one, my fat, hairy, European, absolute dump truck of an ass. Even if I'm supposed to represent this argument in the best possible light, you know, steelman it instead of strawmanning it, and reframe it to say something along the lines of games that don't strive towards a more niche and focused experience, but instead try to appeal to a wide audience by making their game as approachable and gratifying as possible, are usually worse. I'd say that Marvel rivals, Skyrim, Fortnite, Overwatch, everything Nintendo has ever made, GTA, Minecraft, The Sims, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Forza Horizon, The Other Horizon, and anything Valve has ever made that isn't Counter-Strike are but a few examples of games that I would in one way or another consider as games made for everyone. All of these are just incredibly easy to pick up and play, and I can imagine even people that dislike cars enjoying their time with Forza Horizon, or people that dislike first-person shooters enjoying Call of Duty, because the tutorials, systems, difficulty settings, and everything else possible coalesce into a game that is incredibly easy to pick up, get the hang of, and play at a semi-decent level. And at no point does this mean that the games are of worse quality. It's just that the barrier for entry is the player having opposable thumbs, a willingness to press every button on a controller to see what each button does, and a heart rate above room temperature. Hell, sometimes you just need one of those three. Huh. Damn, I really got sidetracked there. Where was I? Let's see. Right. Let's talk about IGN. A quick glance at their Metacritic page will show you that ever since their inception in 1996, IGN as a collective of over 250 employees have reviewed over 15,000 games with an average score of about 7 out of 10.
Nice.
Now, I'm certain that what I'm about to say is going to be some sort of fallacy that Northern Lion would have a field day in debunking, but I wonder if it has ever dawned on any of these people who are offended by pointless review scores that IGN having like 50 bad reviews, which most people disagree with, is actually a pretty dang impressive track record for any review company. And I sincerely believe that if people took 10 minutes out of their day, which is about how long it takes to actually read one of their reviews instead of just seeing the score and jumping to conclusions, that the number of quote-unquote horrible reviews would lower drastically. Yet the endless barrage of people comparing the scores of two different games that have nothing in common with one another is just baffling. This might as well be comparing apples to oranges, and while I understand that you technically speaking can do that, I just see it as a borderline pointless endeavor. Comparing the score of a first-person horror game to a third-person coming-of-age game that were both reviewed by a different person over a decade apart is just completely unproductive and doesn't prove a single point except that people are still mulling over a decade-old review. And I just can't think of a sadder sight than people leaving comments underneath a review explaining why they don't care about a reviewer's opinion. If you go out of your way to leave a comment telling people how you don't care about their reviews, you are either a troll or you actually care about their reviews. You are deeply hurt, offended, befuddled, bamboozled, or even saddened by the fact that a person who you don't know doesn't agree with your video game opinion. What a sad sight. When we could have used this opportunity to really put the pressure on these reviewers for failing to properly disclose the gifts that they received along their free copy of the game. When we could have had a genuinely interesting discussion over what kind of financial situation actually makes for an indie game. When we could have had real discussions over the idea that Mixtape doesn't do the best job of using its genre as a video game to tell a story unique to its medium. When we could have had a genuine discussion over how little player interactivity truly is too little and whether or not that should be factored into a review score. A discussion over the ancient and mostly defunct system of rating games and developers being laid off because they didn't exceed a pointless number that ultimately means nothing. Not even 2 years ago, the entirety of Annapurna Interactive quit their jobs in what can best be described as a mass exodus, prompted by horrible management and a lack of transparency, yet the backlash to that wasn't even a smidge of what the backlash to the release of Mixtape is. Was Avowed good enough to warrant its price tag? We'll never know, because aerophysics compared to Skyrim aerophysics was more important at the time. Everyone complains about how meaningless review scores are, but I don't see anyone giving out a single goddamn solution or improvement. We could have had any one of these infinitely more interesting discussions that could have laid the groundwork for a better, healthier, and more profound view of gaming as a whole and actually change some of its sore points. Instead, every single person who wanted to share these ideas just had to mute the dumb, raging, ear-piercing screeching. These people are repeatedly being stomped out by louder, meaner, and infinitely more deranged posers pretending to care about games when all they really care about is being slightly mean on the internet and playing the algorithm to cash a quick buck. But because they are so loud and numerous in size, they actually change how art is being discussed, perceived, patched, and made. A person I know sent me a link to a video where the video maker themselves, I shit you not, tried extrapolating the quality of Mixtape and various movies funded by Megan Ellison by reading quotes from a website that measures how woke any given piece of media is. No nuance, no thoughtful discussion over the context of the situation, how something was said, nor how the characters around it reacted. They also framed the underlying bisexual subtext of a couple of the characters in Mixtape as the game's emotional core, when the emotional core for anyone that actually interacted with the game is clearly the friendship between our three main characters. They then cherry-pick 3 different games with LGBTQI+ themes that Annapurna published, saying that this is a trend for the company, all the while neglecting to mention the literal dozens of games that feature 0 of those themes and that most of their arguments rest on unprovable assumptions. All the while having the balls to start off the video by saying that the Western gaming industry is sick. Meanwhile, their misinformed, misleading, and potentially harmful rhetoric got pasted over and over again, snuffing out any opposing view as deranged and stupid, and my friend, who blindly trusted this video, tried to hop into a Discord call and spread this same propaganda and misinformation to other people who have never played the game. He didn't even have the decency to pirate the game and try it for himself before spreading the false propaganda. This is how easy it is to manipulate people. To keep the average Joe from actual thoughtful discussions, all the while molding them to fit within a toxic echo chamber that pretends to care about art when all they really care about is their biases that they can't overcome. The average person can't even be bothered to spend 17 euros for a 3-hour game and come up with their own conclusion. Instead of trying out a piece of art for themselves, these people just parrot the opinions of others and make reactionary comments based on a small and biased set of information that they've gathered from a very small and biased set of content creators. And in the process, intentionally or not, poisoning the well, spreading misinformation, and choking out any potentially insightful points of view in the process, making them almost impossible to find. In 1968, a year after its official release, Michael Snow's movie Wavelength had a screening in the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. During the screening, a group of enraged viewers rushed the projector, purposely knocking it over and destroying any chance of a fair and honest discussion over its themes and imagery in the process. And what I find to be even worse, potentially killing any chance of it becoming an audience member's favorite movie or impacting their life in a way that only a piece of art can. Reactionary people who don't see these mediums as art couldn't be bothered to sit still for 45 minutes or just leave the premises and go do anything else with their miserable lives, and in the process ruined the experience for every person who came to see this notoriously difficult to watch movie. Now imagine thousands upon thousands of people doing that, drowning out any potentially interesting conversation, discrediting anyone that disagrees with them, and ruining the moment. When graced with the ability to put the collective brainpower of every single person on planet Earth into a problem, this is the best that we can come up with. This is what pushes our culture and popular conversation forward. Don't worry, those insightful points of view are out there. The average person just can't be bothered to leave their biases behind and wait for the credits to roll to see how beautiful and productive these conversations can actually be.